Lately with this channel, I've been spending a lot of time in random small cities and big towns like Scranton, Johnstown, Wheeling, and a bunch of other ones. And I'm increasingly coming to the conclusion that a lot of people would benefit from moving out of big cities into smaller ones. So many of our issues, both individually and at a societal level, stem from over-concentrated populations in specific areas. Cratering housing affordability, increasing rates of mental health issues, social isolation, traffic congestion, crime, the list goes on and on and on. So for this video, I'm going to look at 5 of the biggest reasons why I think people should consider moving from a big city to a small city. And at the end, I'm going to tackle 2 objections that I know I will inevitably get in the comments section. So I'll start out with the issue that's been big in the news lately and is top of people's minds, and that's housing affordability. There's unquestionably a crisis when it comes to affordable housing, but some places are far more affordable even still than others. Montgomery County, Maryland, median home prices are approaching $700,000, but just a couple counties west in Allegheny County, Maryland, house prices are a fraction of that, with livable houses listed for only around $100,000. So even with the lower incomes that come in Western Maryland, the homes are still way more affordable for a lot more people. And here's a quick example. This house is listed for $105,000. It's been listed for a while, so it may end up selling for even less than that, but let's just assume it sells for $105,000. Depending on your down payment, you're only looking at a monthly payment of $700 to $800 a month. And if you're working 40 hours a week, making $20 an hour, you'll be taking home around $2,800 a month. So in an area like this, you can legitimately afford to buy a house on one full-time $20 an hour income. When you try to run the numbers on that $700,000 Montgomery County house, it's so much harder to make it work and often requires 2 six-figure incomes to even start considering buying. Next, and most importantly in my opinion, small cities and small towns allow for easier community building. While it seems like big cities would be great for meeting all kinds of new people and creating communities, that's not always how it works. In fact, I'd go as far as saying that's usually not how it works. In a big city, you see so many people on such a regular basis that you start to become immune to even noticing them. Or worse, you start to see them as obstacles preventing you from going about your day. That senior citizen walking slowly in the middle of a crowded sidewalk suddenly becomes the jerk who everybody has to try to squeeze their way around just to get by. People rarely make eye contact on the sidewalk, let alone say hi, when they pass each other in the city, and that's something that I've always found strange about big cities, having grown up in a small town. On the flip side, if you're in a smaller town, you don't see as many people, so it makes cordial conversation flow more naturally. Rather than anyone being a mild annoyance, suddenly when you see someone, it's an opportunity to have a friendly conversation. And once you've had enough of those friendly conversations, suddenly you're starting to build real community. And you have the opportunity to cross paths with people in multiple settings, something that's increasingly being recognized by experts as one of the keys to real connection. The two-touch theory, as it's becoming known, goes something like this. We all have those people that we see regularly, but we don't really know. Maybe it's the barista that we always get our coffee from, or the person that sits in front of you at church every Sunday. In that setting, conversation is often minimal, and while you both recognize each other, that's about the extent, just surface-level conversation. But then as soon as you see that person in a different environment, whether maybe you see that person from church at a grocery store or you see that barista at a happy hour, suddenly it becomes infinitely easier to strike up an actual conversation because you feel like you already know each other. Being in a small town makes these chance encounters far more frequent and thus opens the door for more and deeper opportunities to connect with our neighbors. Another area where our society is clearly struggling is with anxiety, and I think moving to a small town can help with that too. In a big city, there's so much external stimuli that there's almost no opportunity for fully relaxing. Urban areas, while the stimulation can be good in some ways, it can be too stimulating at other times. I don't think humans evolved to be around the constant noise and lights and general craziness of having 1 million neighbors. I've noticed this from personal experience. I previously lived in a very busy urban area, and it was cool, but it wasn't until I moved away from that I realized that it sort of opened up another level of relaxation that I hadn't felt in a while. It's not something that I was consciously aware of, but the constant noise and people and thoughts of, is my car going to be towed or broken into, it started to wear on me. So when I did move out, there was so much less background noise, both literally and mentally. And one of the other reasons why people feel so much stress in their lives is because they don't feel like they're in control of anything. And while we're never going to be in complete control of our lives, we're never even going to come close to that, we do have the ability to affect some things, particularly in a smaller, more local environment. It's no surprise that someone in New York, a city of 8 million people, would feel completely helpless and like they're not in control of anything going on around them. Even if it's something as simple as opening up a small business, in a big city, there's layers and layers of bureaucracy, and it probably takes tons and tons of money, and even then, things still have to go just right for it to work out. But in a small town, there's still going to be some of that, but by picking the right place and knowing the people around you, you can cut down on the headaches. Speaking of less headaches, small cities and towns often come with less of them just in general. Like there's less traffic, less crime, easier parking, and generally a more laid-back experience. And while some people would be happy to put up with the craziness if it means being in what they consider the most exciting spot, for a lot of people, the thought of getting away from some of this sounds nice. And finally, one that's becoming increasingly important, and that's less political division. In a small community, because people interact more on a personal level, there's less room for ridiculous political theater and divisiveness. Ironically, because there's less people to interact with, it kind of means that you have to be at least somewhat cordial to everyone, even if they voted differently than you or think differently than you. A lot of small towns even have nonpartisan elections, where someone's political affiliation doesn't factor into the election. To me, this is great, and it's something that we should be doing more of. Besides, when you're dealing with fixing potholes or wanting a good education system, party politics really don't need to come into play. It's only because a huge percent of the population has been programmed to think that it needs to come into play, and they make their decisions based on who's on what team. And this isn't how it has to go. And in a small community where people interact in real life, it makes it easier for it to not go like this. Okay, now on to the objections that I know will fill up the comments section of this video. And the first one is, there's no jobs in these places. How can I pay for my lifestyle in these places? And to that, I would reiterate, I'm suggesting moving to small cities and big towns, not the middle of Alaska. The places I'm talking about are the Scranton, Pennsylvanias of the world, or the Wheeling, West Virginias of the world. They still have a metro population in the hundreds of thousands, so there are jobs. It's just fewer of them, which is fine because there's fewer applicants that you're competing against. And they also pay less, and that's also fine because the lower cost of living in the area will likely more than outweigh the lower pay. Finding a job in one of these areas might require a little bit more creativity. Like if you're a doctor, maybe that means opening your own practice rather than working in a mega hospital. Or if you're in search of your first job, that might mean doing some in-person networking rather than blasting out 1,000 resumes on Indeed to find that first opportunity. But I think even this is sort of a blessing in disguise. Working for giant mega corporations may come with the perception of stability, but a lot of studies have shown higher overall satisfaction rates among employees at small businesses and particularly startups. In Western society, we've come to put such an emphasis on our job that many people are willing to move across the country in the name of getting a new job. They'll move away from their family and their friends and their hobby just to chase that job. But I think we should reevaluate how we do things. We should figure out where we want to live and what we want our lifestyle to look like, and then work backwards from there to determine what kind of job we need to get to make that happen. Like I said before, it might take a little bit more creativity to find our own individual path, but that's more fun than going along with the crowd anyways. And finally, the last objection, and this one I absolutely can't stand, but a lot of people will say, I wouldn't move to Scranton, Pennsylvania, or I wouldn't move to Springfield, Missouri, because it's too boring. And I'm a firm believer that only boring people get bored. I've heard this objection on almost every video that I've made where I say nice things about small towns, and I've never really even understood what it means. Say, for example, hypothetically, you moved from Philadelphia, a big city, to Harrisburg, a small city, a couple hours away. What big opportunities have you missed out on? Again, I'm suggesting that you moved from Philadelphia to Harrisburg. I'm not suggesting that you need to move to the Sahara Desert, drop off the grid, and sever all ties with society. So given that, in a city of 60 or 80,000 people, you still have concerts and events and nightlife and Starbucks and Chipotle and people you can be friends with and volunteer organizations and sports teams and just about anything you can think of. So my question is, what is it that you're actually missing out on? I feel like this has become like the standard response to a lot of these videos, like, oh, it's boring, and I don't understand. The only legitimate answer that I can think of, if someone was really into something particularly unique about one area, then by all means, it would make sense to stay in that area. If you live for the New York nightlife, or maybe you just love the mountain climbing that Denver area offers, or the surfing that Southern California offers, then by all means, stay in those places. But if you're in an upper middle class suburb where the highlight is that you have 7 Starbucks and 4 Chipotles in a 5-mile radius, I would ask the question again, what is it so special about that area? So the point of this video is not to try to convince everybody to move out of big cities. I know that there are plenty of people that love the big city environment and wouldn't be happy in a smaller town. But I do hope that this video encourages people who are currently unhappily living in a big city to consider other possibilities. Our consumer culture has convinced a lot of people that in order to be happy, they need to keep moving up the status ladder. They need to drive the biggest, fanciest car they can afford and live in the ritziest place they can afford and take the highest status job they can get, even if they don't really like the job. So if you're feeling stuck and you feel like what you're doing isn't making you any happier, maybe consider different options. It doesn't have to be a dramatic move tomorrow, but just keep your mind open.